I just wanted to smoke a cigarette in peace, but the monsters won't stop coming. Damn it. How'd I end up in this world? The demon god was bored, so he decided to create a world called Hasion. His goal was nothing more than entertainment through battles. But honestly, I think he's disappointed. In the last 10 minutes, he watched me cry because I couldn't light my cigarette and almost got killed by an angry rabbit. Not even the other humans respect me. Here, I'm treated like trash, but I know a way to become stronger. The secret lies in the monsters. I must eliminate as many as I can. I can trade eyes and teeth for points worth more than money. But what really interests me is the heart. Inside them, there's a core that when consumed, simply increases stats. Even though the taste is awful and the core is low class, tasting like burned tire dipped in cough syrup, my strength increases permanently. I'll grow stronger by devouring them. And then someday I'll take revenge on those bastards who threw me here. I'll take revenge on the demon god. My revenge will be terrible, but my gastritis will be worse. I have this knowledge because I was lucky enough to find a teacher. He has no arms, so I have to feed him and even light his cigarette. I saved him some time ago in the forest, and now he teaches me everything he knows. I'm his portable cigarette lighter now. Today, when I went to sell the items, I saw the warrior Lee Saiyajin. He is a very powerful, high ranker. He had some rare monsters and their hearts hanging like trophies. How I wished I could eat one of those cores. How many levels could I gain? How many points would a monster like that be worth? Would it also taste like burned tire? Currently, my cabin far from the city already costs me 8,000 points. So, I have to go to the city to sell monster loot. More precisely, the central tower of Muddy Village. That's where the general administrator of this city is the demon Krista. With a snap of his fingers, he activates the mark on the hearts of everyone living in Helion. That's how points are recorded. And then, quickly, everything I struggled to gather was sold. It was so little that the demon even laughed at me. But one day I'll kill him, even if it's from laughing too hard. So, I need to return to the hunt. I won't get stronger just by hating them. I need to consume as much as I can. This core has a variable effect, depending on the person. According to my master, the average is 0.6 experience gained per day for most people. Our protagonist gains 0.02 experience per goblin core. Currently, there are 4 initial attributes, and everyone starts at level 7, which can go up to 1, the strongest. For our loser, who doesn't belong to any clan, he needs to consume at least 50 goblins per day just to keep up with everyone else. So he returns to the hunt, farming many monsters every day. It's been 3 weeks since he started hunting like this. His sword was already at its limit. While thinking about buying another, something appeared behind his back. The monster struck quickly. "Was it you who massacred my people?" he asks. It was the first time the protagonist had seen a monster that could talk, and, unfortunately, there was no mute button. "You've probably never seen a goblin like me," he said. This was the goblin's defender, the chief Karakra. Only then did the boy remember that his master had warned him about intelligent monsters, but hadn't mentioned that they were arrogant. The goblin wanted to kill him at any cost. Besides being fast, he was very strong. Karakra even mocked the boy for being weak. He had built expectations since many of his comrades had died by his hands. But he could defeat this human using only his fists. Finding it strange, the boy says that he talks like a human for something that was made in this world. Curious, the goblin asks what he's talking about. The truth is that over the last 3 weeks, he hunted between 40 and 60 goblins every single day, totaling over 1,000. This forest is very small, and there isn't even a single goblin house. So, how can it be so many every day? Is Carcross goblins or something? What the boy means is that they are just monsters that respawn infinitely. Suddenly, the goblin starts laughing uncontrollably. He laughs so loudly that the boy's ears start to hurt. The goblin says that he himself is not disposable like the others, but that he also doesn't want to talk about it. Then he tells the boy to shut up and says he will reward him if he manages to cause him any injury. In other words, he'll have to defeat him to learn anything. The boy charges forward with everything, using the dagger as if it were a long sword, trying to create an opening. But the monster was very smart, so the boy decides to change his attack, but the goblin defends it with ease and even launches a counterattack. But at that moment, the boy says he should earn his reward. The goblin laughs and says, "This is finally getting fun." In a fraction of a second, he appears right in front of him. He was much faster now. Quickly, he reached the boy and struck him several times, throwing him away, making him crash into a tree, and the tree won the fight. Several ribs were broken. The monster was excited by the fight and was about to deliver the finishing blow. But the boy ran with all his strength. He needed to know about the demons. So once again, he returned to trading blows with the monster, forcing him to back away. The goblin was curious about how the boy was still moving despite having broken ribs and an injured left arm. Once again, he asked how the goblin had arrived in Helion. Excited by the battle, the monster says he'll answer while they fight. The truth is that he wasn't dragged into this world. He came because he wanted to. He was hired by some demons. And in short, he's a mercenary, a freelance agent of evil. Hearing this, the boy starts begging him to explain how to leave this place. At that moment, the monster thought the boy had lowered his guard, but he was kicked hard in the stomach and also took several dagger strikes. The monster actually bled and tried to counterattack, but the boy was determined and drove his dagger straight into the center of the monster's chest. Everything was over. The goblin chief had truly lost, but he still wasn't dead and decided to tell everything. The truth is that he was deceived by the demons and became trapped there. Because of a fake contract made for him as a mercenary, he can't return to his home. Realizing he can no longer get any more information from the goblin, the boy says he's leaving, but the monster says he must receive his reward and also says he will give him some tips. So, the boy offers him a cigarette. And yes, the monster is actually smoking with the boy. The bastard spends the entire mana smoking and now wants to get the monsters addicted too. Returning to the tower, the demon continues with the mockery. The hero asked to be treated. The demon accepted to do so in exchange for 10,000 points, and so he began the healing process using a small spell on each wound in order to patch it up. The one with the black wings realized that the adventurer must have gotten a lot of money, lack of usual complaint regarding the cost. Our hero then handed the demon a bag, wanting to know more about what could be done with what's inside it. The administrator knew very well that those weren't regular materials. Yet, upon seeing them, was still left shocked, as those men that the young man had managed to slay with a powerful goblin chief. But the human didn't identify the demon's response, as he urged him to showcase his options. So, with a quick snap of the demon's finger, a window panel appeared before our hero. And so, as he was about to choose from between the many options, he began to recall his most recent encounter when the powerful warrior asked to be devoured by him while wondering if his killer, just like the rest of the goblins, knew about the secret method. Unlike him, Shamwiuk affirmed that he did, but still had his doubts. The goblin chief immediately realized that the young man's hesitation was due to his unusual human characteristics, which wasn't a surprise coming from humanity's philosophy, and he asked him to pay it no mind, as it was an honor for one to become a part of his killer. The dying monster urged the protagonist to use his entire body, even as the young man still had his doubts. But the monster explained how his nails had great value as they were recognized for their toughness among his family. With that being said, the human had no choice but to accept and express his gratitude towards the dying goblin. Karakra apologized for luring the protagonist into his weird fantasies one last time before passing away. Back to the present, as the young man gazed into the panel window that explained that the lens of the chief could enhance his vision, the hero realized once again how the goblin got what he wanted. And despite knowing that he was a monster, it was the only other to converse with him aside from the master. And as he began to think of how the chief goblin felt more like a friend, he asked the demon to transplant its eyes and teeth into him before asking if it was also possible with his nails. The demon confirmed that it was possible, and when asked if it could be tailored to the desired size, it affirmed that everything was possible with money. And with that being said, the young man felt thankful towards the goblin who became a part of him. Later that night, Shamiyu began to admire his Wolverine-like claws, making his master call him out for being a geek. And when asked if the claws were an odd transplant, the armless one affirmed that it wasn't, as they were perfect for sneak attacks. Chao Mui then regretted spending so many points on adding the remains of his friend to his own body. These ranked 7 weapons that would evolve with their owner are impossible to restore despite being known for their hardness and sharpness. The master asked students if Karakra had a core, which he confirms, and, as he pointed out to his student, it must have given him great experience. He realized how far away his mind seemed. Realizing that something was on the mind of his student, the man decided to converse about it on a smoke break. The teacher explained how prideful chief goblins are and how it was his disciple's first time fighting a smart monster before claiming that the young one would meet even more on his journey and could have truthful conversations with them like the one he had with the goblin chief. And upon seeing how the young man was shocked to see him aware of his talk with the monster, the main thing that his expression gave away. He then advised the student to not hesitate when it comes to killing for progress like the goblin chief, must have advised him as well. The master explained that despite the bad feeling of killing a heartful creature, it had to be done in this conduct, as trust and mercy could lead to disastrous defeat before giving himself as an example. Yet, as the young one grew concerned, the Armist plan explained that he needs to be happy to have one and live to tell the tale, and that the claws within his hands were proof that he was a warrior. According to the master, his disciple had every right to be proud of himself. The flattered one expressed his gratitude towards his teacher for his warm words. When asked about his growth level, the young one affirmed that it exceeded all of his expectations. The next day, the claws were being put to the test. Out here, he charged right up ahead before slashing a goblin with his new weapon, leaving it in great pain before ultimately killing it. Korean Wolverine then shook the blood off his claws, making the blue splatter all over the ground. Upon absorbing the goblin chief, the HP and strength of the protagonist had been boosted by 10%. Later on the same hunting grounds, Shimiyu began to think of how he was slowly beginning to adapt himself to his new transplant. As these names were truly becoming his extensions, the young man was shocked to see that he didn't feel any pain upon using the claws, that he had total control over their lands. And just as he was thinking of how he wanted to gain power to live up to the master and goblin chief's expectations, and on the brink of a crucial decision, someone suddenly called him. The bully had returned, claiming that it was refreshing to meet him once again. When the hero asked him how he knew about his whereabouts, he claimed that he wasn't stalking him just because he stopped to say hi before claiming that the hero doesn't frequent many places and that he didn't find any monster to hunt, which is why he went for a walk and met him by surprise. This greatly angered the protagonist that the body decided to address some more important matters. Upon hearing that there were rumors around about him having killed a powerful enemy, Chayuk, that his secret weapon had been spotted, treated the bully as a stalker once again. But Bei Yangshul decided to cut straight to the chase before revealing that it was the administrator who told him so, and that he was certain that the big catch didn't earn the young man much. The Goblin Slayer was left angry at Krusta. What relief that his Wolverine claws weren't spotted by the bully. The boy quickly grabbed the hero and asked for a share of his reward, giving him intrigue. Bei Young then reminded him that less than a week was left, and that the way he treats the protagonist greatly depends on the way the protagonist treats him, which is why he claimed that they should stay as good friends. And after claiming that they should meet once again after picking their classes, the bully finally left, leaving our hero full of fury to the point where he wanted to stab him in the back using his new claws. Even so, he quickly ditched the idea. With a young man who was amazed to have lost his temper as such, he reminded himself that it was impossible for him to kill the bully who was also protected by a guild. Despite this place being like a game, one could still lose an arm or a leg, as the concept of HP was non-existent. And despite his ability to do surprise attacks, he needed to wait. In 6 days, the adventurers would have spent 5 months in the continent, and they will need to pick a class in order to become official residents. This will give the adventurers new stats like magic power, as well as the ability to use skills. Yet, these great abilities come with even greater drawbacks, as it meant that those of round 13 would become able to murder each other. Currently, these adventurers were unable to kill each other due to the well of the demons. Yet, killing and stealing will become crucial after 6 days. Those who had been in the content for the longest are usually the most out of danger. Yet even they only had a year, as the protection would eventually fade away. Our protagonist, clanless and guildless, decided to use his acquaintance with his master and the goblin chief in order to grow stronger for the sake of survival. And in order to gain power, the young man must first get accused of his valor and claws. Upon being spotted by the monster known as Patris, the young man began to think of how a giant frog-looking monster many users use its poisonous tongue for attacks and possessed great speed and jumping abilities. This was rather challenging to kill and was also deprived of core, which the hunter had always avoided. Even so, he found himself in front of the giant tongue today, seeing how he aimed to use it as a training dummy for his new weapon. With that being said, the young man launched himself and avoided the venomous tongue by an inch. With that, he cracked a smile as his theory had been confirmed. The protagonist who slashed the venomous tongue now had the ability to predict the attack pattern. With that, Patris was left in great pain. If you add, the giant human decided to not let the giant frog fight back and ended in the next attack. Yes, as he was about to deliver the final blow, the giant frog jumped into the air, reaching high into the sky before repositioning itself and falling head first to the ground like a meteor descending from the heavens. The giant toad also opened its mouth in order to swallow him whole. The young man, who was surprised by the speed, realized that he needed to retreat. Yet, he quickly dismissed this idea, having decided to place his faith in the gift of the goblin chief, and so he raised himself before jumping into the air and charging at the incoming toad. Human and monster were now face to face. And with that being said, the final clash had occurred. With that, the toad was rendered motionless. Its corpse was lying down next to our hero. He was still amazed by the fact that he had achieved victory in a one-on-one fight. These claws had proven themselves to be more formidable than expected due to their power and precision. This made him admit once again the power of the goblin chief. The young man, who was certain to have no challenge with his new weapon and his future class, had a matter to attend to first. What had to be done was something crucial to his growth and required great focus for the sake of his teacher and fallen friend. 6 days had passed. Our hero presented himself in front of the selection tower in order to pick up his class. And despite this matter being simple, he couldn't help but feel anxious. Even so, he decided to step into the tower by entering its giant gates. According to the rumor, the one that would give him his class wouldn't be the general administrator, despite the inside of this tower looking like his domain. But just then, the Wolverine realized something odd as a mysterious dark gift box presented itself in front of him. Upon seeing it, the hero began to have doubts about whether he should or should not open it. But after thinking for a small while, he decided to give in to temptation. And just as he opened it, a strange form came out of the box before a massive explosion. With that being said, our hero was now in front of a giant, smiling entity. This type of demon was one of the most despised by the protagonist. A plant field asked the young one to come closer. The entity presented itself as Jack in a box and welcomed the protagonist to something it called the consecration of the first blessing. Jack asked the young one about his opinion regarding his sudden appearance, but our weirded-out Chia Muyuk asked the creature if all of its race began conversations as such. The buffoon explained that the humor, which he excels at, was crucial for all demons, and then burst out laughing upon hearing the hero claim that he didn't have time to fool around and wanted to cut straight to the chase. And so, he decided to grant the young one his wish. The clown then presented the Goblin Slayer with many classes. Jack had picked up the classes that would interest our hero the most, where he should just stop twice on the panel of his choosing. The protagonist, annoyed by the library of the demon, had a hard time choosing what he wanted despite having already made his decision. Despite class not being the most crucial part, one still had to be wary when choosing it, as each class granted an advantage known as colonial privilege benefit proper to it, with murder being the most picked class. The reason behind this was the fact that it enhances strength, which is the most crucial stat in this continent, with most of the biggest names having chosen this class. Our hero knew that if he became a marauder like his teacher, he would be able to benefit from his experience. Even so, he decided to go for a different class, which was Hunter. Jack praised the young one for his choice, informing him that he would start the procedure right away. And with the spell being chanted, the young man has forever been changed. Chia Muyuk was left stunned, as he had become an official resident of the continent with double the head and 3 skills proper to his new class, along with having acquired the stat magic power. The annoying creature then asked the protagonist if he was pleased with his choice, so he affirmed that he still had to test it. Our hero assumed that this double in half would allow him to double his growth rate for HP when consuming goblin cores before opting to look at the magic status. And upon seeing that it was nothing special, he assumed that he would need to consume many cores in order to enhance it. But while thinking of how this new stat would affect his skills, Jack affirmed that he still had to pick a unique skill. And as the demon explained how this was the biggest blessing for beginners and started to recite the many skills, our hero demanded camouflage of the jeweled lizard. This intrigued Jack. So, our hero stated his choice once again. The demon tried to argue that there were many other options, but the young man still insisted on his choice. The amused clown decided to grant his wish, asking him to not cry about it later. And just like that, Chow Hyuk had acquired the skill he had demanded. Jack then asked the young man for the reason behind his choice, but upon seeing how, he asked if he was forced to reply. The clown affirmed that he didn't before suddenly changing forms. The entity seemed angry as it popped up 3 additional eyes. Jack affirmed that his curiosity would be satisfied and that the young man was forced to answer truthfully. The imposing demon reminded the young man that he should always try to be respectful in front of their superior race. Yet, the unfazed hero asked the entity if it was truly determined to hear his true answer. And so, the giant demon reverted back to his original form, cracking back up his original smile and claiming that the young man should relax as he was just playing around. Xiao couldn't help but be left angry. With that being said, Jack praised the young man for staying alive for that long before explaining that the real hardships would start now. After that, he picked up his class and saw the demon bid his friend farewell, wishing him prosperity. That the young man finally exited the tower. After some time, he entered a small alley into a village. Our hero began to sweat bullets as he tried to catch his breath. The protagonist assumed that he was going to meet his demise, as he had never been this overwhelmed. This made him wonder about the aura of the stronger demons, seeing how imposing the class selection one turned out to be. With that being said, the protagonist began to doubt his own abilities to face the demons and escape the hell they created. That same night, the master was intrigued by the unique skill picked up by a student. Yet, the young man firmly affirmed his choice. When asked if he was aware of the reason behind the importance of the first unique skill, the protagonist affirmed that he did. Aside from the one granted to the adventurer in class selection, only one true way can allow the adventurer to acquire a skill, which was discovering that one could either purchase or obtain from a fallen monster with its value being proportional to its rarity. Yet, seeing how high their price truly is compared to the usefulness, the best method is to acquire them while hunting. And seeing how weak monsters drop weak skills, one needed to hunt powerful monsters in order to acquire great skills. The reason behind the first unique skill being so crucial is the fact that it is the only one that could be acquired without any hardships. The young man had his doubts when giving the reason behind picking up this skill, but his teacher asked him to speak his mind at once. According to our hero, camouflage of the jeweled lizard allows the reorganization of the status exact numerical value for a short time period, meaning that it could be used in any situation. The master affirmed his speechless student that there were many others with better skills. Yet, according to the young one, those better alternatives were either currently hard to learn or hard to obtain, and that he had a reason for his choice. As this was a unique skill that didn't rely on magic power, and seeing how unique skills could be refined, camouflage of the jeweled lizard that had a 0.5% growth rate would surely become a wild card in his arsenal. The young man affirmed once again that he had made the right choice as it was suitable for his low magic power. This earned him the teacher's praise for his mature philosophy. And so the armless one practiced a smile, determined to bring out the most of this skill's potential before explaining that he had a monster in mind that would be much better than goblins. The next day, in another part of the woods, our hero had finally reached the location designated by his master. And just then he saw it, the monster mentioned by his master. The creature in question also spotted the protagonist. Chia Muyuk knew that this monster lived alone in a giant territory, making him perfect for long hunts. First, using him for practice would allow him to take down others and gain points. With that being said, hunter and hunted were now face to face. The core consumer charged, thinking of how it possessed a marble. With that being said, he decided to resort to unique skill in order to focus all of his stats into strength and agility for the sake of slaying this new foe as quickly as possible. Shamwyuk didn't pay his decrease of his endurance attention as he was certain of finishing the fight with a single strike. But just then, the young man was left alerted as the monster readjusted itself before delivering a powerful kick that countered his fierce claws. The monster with the broad head had overwhelmed the Korean Wolverine. Our hero, who had finally witnessed the fast jump attack of the creature, realized that it was his enhanced agility that allowed him to evade a deadly blow. The young man realized that the move of the creature took some time to reset and that it would have eliminated him upon direct contact. The protagonist decided to finish it before the skill could be reset. Upon seeing how his attack didn't connect, he assumed that he wasn't fast enough. Only then did he realize that he was forced to parry an attack. And just like that, the hunter tanked the tail of the monster that knocked him a few feet away. Yet, this miscalculation allowed the young man to firmly grasp the power of the target's tail. This also made him realize that his unique skill was to defeat the pig-like kangaroo. With that being said, he dodged crushing death only to find the monster right above him shortly after. The creature then let out a roar before bracing itself and swinging its giant tail. Yet upon going for the strike, the protagonist was nowhere to be found. Only then did the young man appear right behind it. The mutant was left in a tough situation, trying to react. Yet the hunter knew very well that victory had already been achieved as he slashed through the monster's chest using his claws, making it cough blood and scream. And as the young man firmly planted his extensions into the monster, its corpse was rendered lifeless. The hero tried to recatch his breath, now that the creature had fallen to the grasp of death. With that being said, our hero lay down on the ground and reached his claws to the sky. While thinking of how he managed to achieve victory with much more ease than predicted, Chamiyuk found that the fight ended quickly, even for a monster with thin skin. The young man began to think of how the nails of his friend combined with his skills, as well as the stats he had acre wet on for the monster, and the thing he aimed to acquire would give him even more power. Just like that, the fortunate hunter was now in possession of the monster's core. Upon consuming it, he found that it was more delectable than that of a goblin. The protagonist was then left amazed upon seeing how his strength had been enhanced by 0.16%. This left him overjoyed as his gains equaled the combined enhancement of 6 goblin cores. With the items now in hand, the general administrator pointed out how the number of tailbones, livers, and tendons from the Koilo brought by our hero amounted to 1,190 points. This pleased the young man, as upon hunting the monster for almost a month, he had acquired 29,450 points in total. He kept on increasing his daily ratio of Koilo kill count to 360 in total. The effects of the cores also pleased him, as it was like none other. But as he began to think of how this creature, who was more little than goblins, profitable course and better point gain, he was interrupted by the demon, who urged him to go outside if he didn't have anything else to do in his shop. But the protagonist affirmed that he still had some business. The annoyed black-winged ones assumed that the young man was about to buy cigarettes. But upon hearing his desire to pay his rent up front, he called him out for this bad decision, as these were unpredictable times despite the young man having money. The demon then asked him if he needed anything else. So the young man revealed how he would be abstaining high himself from the forced hunt. This revelation shocked the creature, who explained how he would have to pay a total of 10,000 points in order to evade the task. Seeing the hero insisting, he reminded him how fruitful the first forced hunt could be. And even then, he remained firm in his decision. This lack of guts, despite having gained power, greatly entertained the demon, who granted the young man's wish, claiming that retreating could also be considered a plan. Just like that, rent and penalty had been paid at once. Xiao Mayuk knew very well that he could most likely get great gear by slaying weak monsters in the forced hunt, and even get skill rings if fortune smiled upon him. Yet, he needed to avoid it in order to ensure his survival. As in the first hunt, our hero would face all the contestants who were backed up by a group which could place his income and life in danger. The young man also planned to sneak into the hunting grounds of the clans and guilds in order to farm points, while all would be distracted by the first hunt, seeing how despite the effectiveness of skill rings and gear points would always open more possibilities. The protagonist was certain that he made the right call as he returned home. Yet upon seeing what was inside, he was left horrified. As his master was lying on the ground, Zayao quickly rushed to check on his master. The man explained how he had just been exposed to a few slaps. With that being said, the disciple rushed to install his master in a comfortable position before asking him about the culprits. The one who had beaten up the master turned out to be a man known as Park Han-soo, an acquaintance of the protagonist who he had met a week after arriving here. Park Han-soo, who tried to use the protagonist in order to earn himself some points, would surely not have approached the master if he was in his peak condition. When asked for a reason behind that violence, the teacher explained how some guilds forming an expedition squad needed some intel from him. Since many areas in this continent were undiscovered, unveiling them would bring great fortune, which is why he got beaten up, as he had info on an unknown area. This confused the young man, seeing how the thug could have easily and formally asked him. Yet, the master affirmed that they didn't need to do so, seeing how he was a weak source of intel with a known location before pointing out the kind nature of a student. This greatly angered Shamwyuk. The master then asked the student to avoid any direct combat with the man who might come for him, seeing how he didn't get any intel the first time. But the angered one explained that as a newbie, he was unkillable by the older residents, meaning that he had no reason to fear. Yet, upon hearing the teacher who endured the beating due to his stats explain that the bully was still too strong for him, he claimed that he wouldn't seek combat, but be prepared for it. Later on, while walking in the woods, our protagonist realized that the skills he kept on spamming had been strengthened a little. He also knew very well that he had to enhance his health and stamina, as this Hun TET would be a long one, which is why he tried to balance his stats. But just then something caught his attention. The protagonist was now face to face with a rainbow snake, a brilliant forest monster whose eyes, venom, and skin could be sold for an extremely high price. Our hero could even use its meat as food for himself or a way to lure other monsters. He was particularly startled to have met this monster at the start of his journey. With that being said, the creature was left alerted. The scared reptile charged at the Korean Wolverine, only for our hero to go for a thrust that struck the monster's upper jaw. And just like that, the rainbow snake had been slain. Chamiyuk speculated to earn more points than he had predicted if he stumbled upon more expensive monsters who were easy to kill. And so, he was determined to clear this area of monsters before the first hunt could reach its end. Shortly after, the young man took his fighting stance once again as he was now face to face with a golem. Silence reigned supreme as monster and human were face to face. The golem was the first to attack, delivering a punch so powerful that it could crush the ground, but the quick hero managed to sneak himself behind it before resorting to his powerful goblin nails and decapitating the giant of stone. Just like that, the Korean Wolverine had achieved yet another victory. Seeing how this item that he had gotten from this monster could be sold for 3,000 points, our protagonist realized that this place was truly a golden goose for newbies. Our protagonist was also pleased with his choice and unique skill, as its effectiveness allowed him to earn more than 12,000 points. Our hero happily recalled the baffled reaction of the general administrator, wishing that he could have captured this moment forever. Yet, while thinking of how this forest was the property of a major clan and how ivory was useless, As all were facing the same problem, he suddenly heard something. The star of the protagonist quickly pulled out his claws, still baffled by the fact that someone approached him without him noticing. With his claws out, the mysterious one hiding was left intrigued. Myuk, who was too distracted by his earnings, realized that another contestant in 13 rounds must have skipped the first hunt, meaning that it was certainly a first year. Seeing how only newbies were attracted to this forest, the young man speculated that he should rearrange his stats for the fight. But just as the young man raised his voice while speaking to the intruder and urging him to come out, a redhead suddenly appeared from a bush. Upon seeing the lady carrying a dagger, the hero recalled her well. As during his first 7 days on the continent, as he was trying to run for his life, a wild dog-like monster appeared. He and the other newbies tried to make a run for it. The protagonist was particularly terrified. But just then he noticed something intriguing. As the lady, he didn't have the opportunity to know her name, yet he called her very well. In a state of panic, was the only one to face the monsters. While others were too scared to fight, she stood on the front lines alone. The ashamed protagonist was once among those who ran away. Upon hitting the girl, he asked him if they were both first years. He realized that she didn't remember him, just as expected. The hero even gave a shady answer when asked if he was alone, as her reaction was unpredictable. The lady wanted to know how long he had been in these hunting grounds. But the hero refused to answer once again before pointing out that they were here to accomplish the same goal, which is why they should cut to the chase. And with that being said, the lady stated that she would hunt in the east while he takes care of the west before warning him of entering her territory. Shamwyuk, the girl who turned out to be a fan of X-Men, asked the protagonist if he was inspired by the franchise while picking his weapon. The fake Wolverine affirmed that he only chose it for its efficiency, making the girl chuckle as she didn't want to admit the truth. This reaction made the young man blush a little. With that being said, she wished him luck before going on her way and leaving him irritated. Myuk was annoyed by the fact that a girl mocked him after spawning out of a bush. And while complaining about her attitude, he began to think of how relieving it was to see that their interaction ended in peace. Our hero also decided to keep an eye open, seeing how a potential betrayal was still in question. But upon recalling her angelic laughter, the young man began to blush once again. Even so, he decided to pull himself together and hunt before any other interruption occurred. Hunting would be the best way for him to keep his mind in the game and finish his task quickly before returning home. Shortly after, the protagonist began to think of how his constant weariness was doubling the efforts on him while exiting the forest after a successful day. This made him realize how convenient allies could be before thinking of how the girl seemed to also be on her own, which left him intrigued, seeing how she should have entered a good guild with her set of skills. But as he began to wonder about the reason behind her solitude, he quickly shook off the idea, claiming that he would head back immediately in order to have a meal and get some rest. But just then, the core consumer noticed his first goblin. Thus, the hero decided to do his thing before going home. The creature was left confused, and before it could even react, the predator had already grabbed it. Before making its broad spill everywhere, Shamwyuk located what he saw from the goblin, who became too much of an easy prey. With that being said, he consumed the green marble, and while he was preoccupied with being disgusted by the taste, he was suddenly spotted. This left him startled, as it was none other than the girl from before. The disgusted lady thought of the protagonist as a madman, while he was left horrified, seeing how his secret had been unveiled. The protagonist was irritated by this sudden meeting, annoyed by the fact that the lady ended her hunt at that crucial moment. Even so, the lady that was calling him a madman shouldn't have spotted the marble. Judging by her disgusted reaction, the baffled redhead assumed that our hero had consumed the heart of the monster. He tried to argue that he was poor. Yet, she affirmed that this doesn't make him less of a madman. Yet, as the young one tried to explain himself, the lady claimed that she didn't expect to have haunted next to a mad psychopath. Seeing this hostility, our hero affirmed that he could explain himself. Yet, the lady didn't want to hear any of it, considering him a madman, just as she was determined to kill. Chamohyo pointed out how odd it is for her to try and eliminate him without giving him a chance to explain his actions. The girl stopped for a second. Our protagonist explained that she would receive the fight if she sought it. It would be better to resolve it in peace. With that being said, he let out his claws in order to brace himself before asking the lady what option she chose. According to the redhead, someone as crazy as him was too unpredictable to be left alive, but she accepted to talk it out, claiming to be a pacifist. First, our hero had 5 minutes to justify his actions. The Goblin Slayer claimed to have truly eaten the monster's heart, and it wasn't out of madness. The intrigue began to mock him for considering the heart a delicacy. Upon hearing this, Chamu Hyuk explained how he was living with his teacher and savior who was rendered handicapped, and that his skills weren't enough for the both of them to survive, which is why he decided to apply the teachings of the man and consume monsters in order to save some money. Yes, the lady had her doubts, seeing how similar goblins were to humans while other animalistic monsters existed. So, he explained how he was forced to consume goblins to survive. Living here was somewhat disgusting. Upon claiming that the taste would be more pleasant after getting used to it before offering her some, which she immediately declined, and when asked when he went for the heart, especially, the young man explained how he used it to replace vegetables. The redhead creeped out. Our hero then explained that despite being disgusted at first, he had no choice but to endure it, and he and the lady had similar stories, only different means to ends. This left her on his words. With that, the Wolverine affirmed that he wasn't a cannibal and affirmed that if she didn't believe him as he pulled out his claws, that she was free to go for the other option and that he would do his best to achieve victory. Seeing how he owed something to someone, the redhead decided to not bite into the story, but decided to let it go as she was exhausted from the hunting and didn't have enough proof of his insanity. Even so, she affirmed to him that at the slightest sign of madness, she would surely charge at him. She also explained that he was free to hunt here once again, but to stay out of her territory, seeing how he wasn't worthy of her trust. And with that, the lady bid our hero farewell while insulting him in a low tone that he managed to hear. The relieved Shia Muyuk decided to be more aware when consuming corpses, seeing how he had almost been uncovered if it wasn't for his made-up lie. He then began to reflect on the tiring personality of the lady that would surely pose a problem the next day. The next sun finally died on the continent. The young man arrived at this scene rather happy with his new equipment. The protagonist had bought a piece of buffalo leather armor, which was a rank 7 low durability light item that cost 45,000 points. Our hero began to think of how convenient armor is, seeing how it could be paired with something else. The young man also wanted to earn 50,000 more points in order to purchase a skill ring that he desired, which would have been possible in 4 days if it wasn't for the other adventurer, who gave him intriguing gazes. The protagonist assumed that she was awaiting his arrival, and so when he confronted her about it, she denied the whole thing and claimed that they should set their territories for the day. With that being done quickly, the lady warned him once again to not enter her grounds. Yet he couldn't care less. But as she began to walk away while mumbling to herself, she was called by the protagonist, leaving her even more irritated. Chamu, who claimed that they should introduce themselves to each other, seeing how they were forced to converse, only for his idea to be quickly rejected. This left the young man rather angered by the short temper of a lady who even refused to state her name as she didn't have faith in him despite his good behavior. He then began to recall how his teacher once trusted his opponent, which led him to lose 3 lamps, and with that being said, decided to take his misfortune as an example, thinking of how the lady would have been friendlier outside the continent. The annoyed hero then decided to take a small smoke break, only to hear an unexpected voice that left him alarmed as more people appeared in the forest. He quickly hid behind the city, thinking of how the intruders must have also skipped the hunt, and with the 2 new faces in the brilliant forest. The smoker was left on his guard, having recognized both of them as from the same round as him. Even so, he could only remember them by the fact that they were non-Koreans. The 2 men discussing how they should have enough points and gear for them to pillage. And as they continued their conversation, deprived of honor, they discussed this protagonist realized that they plan on ambushing the lady. After thinking for some time, he thought it would be wise to dispose of them for his own sake, as they were planning on ambushing the girl and roaming in the forest until the end of the hunt. Yet, despite not knowing how powerful these 2 were, he assumed that since he and the lady matched them in number, fighting them was worth a try. Yet, as he began to plan on killing the first by surprise and slaying the second on his own, he realized what he just thought, as he had easily planned on taking his first life without giving it a second thought, making him assume that he was changed by the goblin hunting. This also made him recall his victory over the goblin chief. But just then he was about to back out of it, as the ambushers were about to disappear. So he decided to push this matter aside and concentrate on them. The fat one asked his friend to conceal himself while he searched for their target, and after a short, while she was finally spotted. The lady with the dagger was fighting a giant insect that was giving her a hard time. The fat one instructed the other to hide in the bushes out here, who assumed that they were waiting for the right opportunity, but couldn't hear them. Assumed that the lady should easily take care of the both of them. But just then, he noticed that one of the ambushers wasn't holding a weapon, and that the other was about to unleash a sneak attack that he must interrupt at all costs. First, he decided to track the blonde one. As the lady's fight with the ant was about to come to an end, the thug realized that it was almost time for the ambush. In the end, the girl decapitated the giant bug, rendering her the winner of the fight. Seeing this made the young man realize that the ambushers were about to act, so he decided to resort to his unique skill in order to enhance his stamina and agility and take them down in a short time while deciding to rely on stealth in case of emergencies. At the same time, the redhead began to think of how her prey was tougher than expected. She was about to check her prize. Shurikens had been pulled out. Our hero was left annoyed, as he should have predicted that they were going to use long-range attacks. With that, the thug prepared to launch his projectiles. So, the young man rushed to stop him. Yet it was too late. As the shurikens had already been thrown, Shamwyuk instantly warned the girl to duck. This made her turn around startled. Seeing this, the fat one came out of his hiding spot, annoyed by the fact that the girl wasn't alone. Just then, she had been hit in the shoulder and the thigh. The criminal demanded to know who the party pooper was. With that being said, began the clash between the hunters of round 13, with the fat one charging at the lady, who clashed with her dagger using his bare hand. And while she was annoyed that he was using a skill, he urged his partner to finish his opponent at once. A task that's the image it went to execute. The young man realized that the old one was about to use a body kick. So, he planned on parrying and taking a few steps back. But when the kick was executed, he was left startled, having realized that his opponent knew martial arts. Just like that, the young man had been kicked in the face. And with that being done, the thug began to laugh proudly, claiming that he was stronger than the others from round 13. Yet, at that moment, Wolverine was more preoccupied by the fact that the kick tickled, leaving the kicker intrigued. With that, our hero casually punched him in the face, knocking him down while still being confused about how the damage of the kick was rather weak. Meanwhile, back at the other fight, the lady who realized she was facing a kickboxer was surprised by her opponent's speed. Just then, he charged at her, resorting to his skill once again. The guy realized that she couldn't await the incoming blow, so she had no choice but to block it. Even so, she was knocked into the air before falling back on her back. The criminal praised her for showcasing such skills despite being injured, as he decided to finish her off. But just then, he was left alarmed. Upon realizing that the young man was about to punch him, but the fat one quickly blocked the incoming blow. He then proceeded to call our hero a rat for following them before asking what happened to his ally. Being treated as a pest was found ironic by our hero, seeing how they were the true ambushers. With that being said, Shimuyu proposed to puncture his opponent's face. Yet, upon being bombarded with a barrage of punches, our hero realized that this man who knows martial arts was a marauder. The endurance of the protagonist began to annoy the thug, who claimed that if it weren't for those irritating game-like perks, he would have already won the fight, as well as his friend who just died. But the hero affirmed that he was alive. Just then, the fat one got through the defense of the protagonist, asking him if he was expecting praise for his mercy. And, with that being said, he delivered a powerful punch to the gut. The smoker was amazed to see that despite his protections, he was still feeling pain. Even so, he was determined to achieve victory. This attitude made the criminal recognize tenacity. The man then grabbed him by the hair, pointing out his martial arts skills that were inferior to his. Our hero was filled with frustration when he asked the man if he planned on eliminating him and the lady, and after pausing for a small second, he burst out in laughter, affirming that this was the purpose of a surprise attack, thinking that the young one was back to beg for his life. The criminal then affirmed that begging would be useless, seeing how the fight had already been engaged. So, the young man affirmed that this wasn't the case, as he placed his fist on the man's heart, who mocked him, thinking that this was a weak punch. As our protagonist asked him once again if he truly wanted to take their lives, and as the man confirmed once again, the protagonist found his expression filled with sadness. As he executed the man, blood began to come out of the mouth of the criminal, who just realized that he had been taken out by a secret weapon before falling dead on the ground. Chia Muyuk was surprised to see that the same voice he feels when eliminating goblins manifested itself upon killing this man. He could only feel the satisfaction of victory and the damage of the battle. This made him assume that hunting had truly changed him. Just then, our hero was approached by the lady who, despite being confused, recognized that the young man had saved her life. As the protagonist explained how he had spotted them by coincidence, she had shown them mercy in the past, which they didn't appreciate. When asked why she was helped out, the hero explained that it was only rational, seeing how he would have become their next target. With that being said, the blushing redhead finally expressed her gratitude towards her savior. This left him stunned to a point where his silence confused the girl, and so he claimed that he wanted to hear her words again, as the shock of the fight rendered him deaf, leaving her annoyed, but he affirmed that it was the least he expected, seeing how he got hurt protecting her. As the embarrassed redhead thanked him once again, claiming that she would repay the favor, Arma's young man claimed that he wanted to hear it one more time, leading to him being grabbed by the collar. But just then they heard grunting by the tall one, who was still amazed by the fact that his ally, who should be the most powerful of the RU, and had fallen. Seeing how the old man who had faith in his companion approached them so casually made the protagonist realize that he wasn't very smart. Just then he realized that the lady was angry beyond reason. Her rage terrified the criminal who decided to make a run for it. With that, the girl tried to attack him with the same shuriken he used on her as the protagonist tried to stop her. Yet once again, it was too late. And just like that, the projectile hit the man in the skull, making him fall dead on the ground. The frustrated hunter asked the lady for the reason behind her action, to which she responded by stating that it was only natural seeing how they tried to kill them first. The protagonist tried to argue that there was no need to attack someone fleeing away, which left him intrigued as he himself could understand the reason behind her anger. But just then, the lady pointed out that something wasn't right, before calling the protagonist for not doing much in order to prevent the murder. This left him baffled as silence reigned once again in the forest. The young one asked her if there was really no problem, which she confirmed with an annoyed expression. The mark harvest allows one to take the points of someone with no beating heart for a short period of time that could be eternal if placed in the tower. Our hero claims that he would consider both marks mark harvest as a token of her gratefulness, but the lady affirmed that it wasn't the case, as warning her about an incoming attack and helping her bat it were two different things in her book, leading the protagonist to be amazed by how difficult she is as she screamed at him to help her walk. The young man accepted to offer help, claiming that he was also injured, making the girl point out how he was less wounded than her. He explained how the thieves wasted their farming time, which made the lady assume that he wanted to make her feel guilt. Yet he denied, stating that they must have a good loot, which the lady agreed with, seeing how powerful the thieves were. But as she began to complain about how she could have taken them on if it wasn't for the surprise attack, the hero realized that she wasn't so cold after getting to know her. This made him recall the words of the lady, which made him reflect, and when he was asked what was on his mind. He claimed to have forgotten what he wanted to ask her, but the girl used it as an opportunity to mock him for being a victim of Alzheimer's. This irritated the hero, who just recalled his question regarding the reason behind her not being in a guild. The girl was left intrigued by this question, so the protagonist explained how odd it was seeing how powerful she is. With that, she stopped for a second before explaining how she was once a part of Six Pole. This left the protagonist amazed, as this was a family made by 6 strangers who were all Koreans. And when he asked about the reason behind her leaving them, her expression darkened as she refused to answer the question. Our hero was left baffled as this was his initial question. Seeing how there was no room for conversing with the lady, he decided to go hit himself while she complained about her broken leg. After a short while, they finally made it to the tower. And as the young man began to complain about how hard it was for him to carry her here, the angered girl affirmed once again that she was injured. With that being said, she pushed him aside, claiming that she could go on her own from now on, which she found pretty hurtful, seeing how much he had helped her. But the girl affirmed that their helping was mutual. Yet just as he was about to leave, regretting not ignoring her from the start, she uttered the words so young. The lady who recalled how the young man wanted to exchange names. Charlie presented herself as Ano Young to the protagonist, who introduced himself as well. With that being said, ANS So Young cracked an angelic smile as she bid him farewell, leaving him smitten. Only then was he approached by the entity with the black wings that startled him and snapped him back to reality. The administrator, who realized that the young man had turned early due to his injuries, charged him 10,000 points once again for healing services. After the healing, when asked if he needed any other services, he claimed to have 2 marks. This pleased the blonde entity, who claimed that the young one finally realized that the best way to obtain points was to kill other contestants. Explained how slaying monsters is good, but one needed to kill other players in order to survive. This made him remember the murder of the goons, as well as the dark gaze of the lady, who pointed out how he didn't try to prevent the murders. The frustrated young man then pushed the demon away in her name that he stumbled upon 2 contestants who had murdered each other. Yet the demon didn't believe him one bit. With that being said, the administrator decided to check what he had looted. After finishing his business inside the tower, the young man began to complain about the demon trying to get on his nerves despite his already bad mood. He then began to wonder if his new partner had already returned to the forest. Before opening his panel window and thinking of how the marks of the thugs contain 80,000 points, which could allow him to get a decent skill, Chow Hyuk knew very well that his heart was full and tortured by desires. Yet, he decided to gaze upon tomorrow. The protagonist decided to keep his quick growth going. Before looking at the tower and thinking of how he would one day make the demons reveal everything to him. As the next day dawned, a giant frog that was in the forest suddenly felt alerted. So, it unleashed its powerful tongue in order to attack, only for the attacker to jump at her from behind and stab the toad in this call using his powerful claws. Just like that, Another monster had been slain. The protagonist cracked up a smile, seeing how pleasing the results were, as they were incredible and worth the loss of blood that he suffered. Rush of the Fearful Baroque was a unique skill that multiplies all stats except magic by 2 that our hero used to make the monsters in the brilliant forest as easy to hunt as goblins. Out here, he then snuck up behind a giant golem and charged at him from behind. Only then did he feel a sudden change as the good thing came to an end, and while evading the incoming hit, he began to think of how this skill had a small duration that makes one feel heavy upon ending, which was something he needed to adapt to. Shamwyuk then climbed up the arm, thinking about how the other con was the long grace at a time caused by his lack of magic power. Magic and magic power were two different things, as the second has a reset time and doesn't require MP, which reduces the cooldown and increases efficiency once upgraded. Magic power was the only stat that couldn't be affected by his new unique skill, and the start of its long cooldown that needed to be shortened had many signs, with the first being a pain in the head, as the skill could be used once again once the agony is gone. As the protagonist picked up the core, he began to think of how the 20-minute cooldown would double if the new unique skill is paired up with his first one, which didn't seem unfair. The young man also realized that this skill could become his wild card once he got stronger to the point where it could greatly help him in the upcoming trials. Shortly after, near the tower, the young man turned to the village and was left shocked upon seeing many hunters exit the gate, which meant that the forced hunt came to an end. This greatly annoyed him, as it meant that he needed to abandon the fancy hunting grounds that gave him great profits and go to his original spots. But, just as the protagonist was about to set some items and go supper at home, he was suddenly approached by someone. When that turned out to be the bully who always seemed to locate him, as Xiaomu pointed out how the hunt must have gone smoothly. The bully took it as some kind of insult before claiming that he was only saying this to the protagonist, who tried to explain himself. Bayuch surprised the hero by suddenly showcasing his anger while he asked for the reason behind his absence, making the hero ask if this was truly a big deal. But the bully affirmed that it was, as he explained once again, that the treatment he shows the protagonist is relative to the one he shows him. Bay then explained that his lackey could have at least shown up, leaving him rather disappointed. The bully then affirmed that teaming up with the young man was the only way to survive this continent, which is why this would be his last mercy. With that, he pushed the hero away before demanding him to show up to the next force hunt. And as the harasser claimed that the young man could either be his lucky charm or his kill, Chamu Hyuk realized that something was weird. Just as the bully was about to hit the young man for his dark gazes, he was suddenly called by someone who urged him to finish off their urgent business, making him rush to do it. With that being said, he left while warning the protagonist of the next hunt. The hero was intrigued by this change of personality and his desire to force their team up, only to realize that the reason wasn't so obscure as he had gone through it to the event of taking a life. A month after this incident, the protagonist suggested digging into his master, who was intrigued by the fact that he had spent quite some money in order to make the meal. The protagonist explained that since his earnings had increased and that he needed new gear, he would also buy fancy food, earning him the scold of his master, who realized the way his students lived on Earth and that he was longing for fat food. And so the teacher, who couldn't eat at all, proposed a cigarette before the meal. The man then pointed out to his student how the forced event was less than 72 hours away. With that being said, the master firmly advised his young student to go all out in the upcoming hunt, which he accepted to do. He then pointed out how the bully was dragging his disciple into the event, who he claimed to be even faster than this continent. They must have realized that the fruitful hunt is extremely violent after taking a life. The master then explained how one must have a lot of wild cards, and how the protagonist should ignore his kind nature there, and that he was already prepared to do it. This left the young man shocked, as he called the first person he killed, claiming that he would remember the advice of his master. With that being said, the one with no arms was left reassured before apologizing for bringing up such a sensitive matter and proposing to dig in. Starting with the chicken, the protagonist expected his master to be aware of his per kill despite not having told him. And so, he was determined to do his very best to survive in order to escape the continent along with his teacher 3 days later. So the portal was finally opened. All contestants were bracing themselves as the forced hunt was about to begin. With that being said, ready for the upcoming brutal event, the protagonist tried to calm himself down by remembering his growth. With that, he was finally ready to enter. And so he walked into the portal. After a blinding light, he found himself in a dark place with a purple moon along with the others. And just as he began to wonder about their next action, an entity suddenly popped up, casually greeting the contestants. The demon, who noticed that they were newcomers, presented himself as Carol, the hunting enforcer, as the body asked him to cut straight to the chase with an angry tone. The entity pointed out how he was as enthusiastic as ever. The The protagonist was left intrigued by the demon, who took this insult as a joke. With that being said, it presented the map of the hunt, as the place pointed to. Just like that, all were left amazed as the enforcer presented the map as the Tower of Time. Xiao Hyuk and So Yong were amazed by how such a structure suddenly appeared. The demon explained that the name of the map was Nothing and that they needed to ascend to level 5 in order to complete the hunt, and that the final floor only opens every 10 days and would be sealed until then. The entity then cheerfully explained that those who ill to enter the level would fade away with the map, which would be the best option for the weaklings. And as the protagonist realized why this creature was despised by everyone, it procured watches in order to watch the time. The second rule claimed that no one could get piggybacked as one needed 100 kills to enter the final level. Rule number 3 is that the monster processes black coins called tower tokens that cost 1,000 points each, as well as skill rings. The entity then playfully informed the contestants that they were free to take the watches from the others in order to add their KDA to their own, leaving the contestants in chambers. Out here, he realized that it insinuated that one could kill powerful contestants in order to save his energy. Rule number 4 is that all living beings would discover the location of anyone who spends more than a day inside the same floor. Leaving the bully particularly shocked, his teammate pointed out how it was a hustle for their big group. While he claimed that this was no surprise coming from the demon, B reassured his teammate that their powerful group had nothing to fear. Even so, he knew very well that he was the powerful one and that his teammates were just pawns to manipulate and dismiss. The lady realized that the final rule would increase the number of fights occurring on the map. While the protagonist realized that he was in a tough spot, as due to his absence on the first hunt, no one was likely to take him on their team, with the exception being the bully who would surely betray him, meaning that his only option was the redhead. And so, after gathering the necessary courage to approach her, he was shocked to see her taking the first step instead. With that being said, they were now face to face. The young man was surprised to see that she was the one to propose the team up. And so Young explained that the only option for a loner like him would be to work with her, as she urged him to choose. This made our hero crack a smile before accepting the team up, when suddenly he was grabbed and dragged by the lady who urged him to hurry up. And so Young claimed that they should run as fast as possible, seeing how it had already started. The protagonist recognized once again how amazing this girl was. Seeing this left the bully in rage, as he urged his teammates to rush in as well. Byuch was angered by the fact that he was turned down, but consoled himself by thinking of how he was going to dispose of the one he decided to kill. The enforcer was left annoyed, seeing how the rushing humans skipped what he still had to say. And so, he decided to explain the rest at the entrance before admiring their passion. Meanwhile, the hero who claimed that speed was great explained that they should plan together before doing something like that. But his partner affirmed that they had no time, as talking was wasting their precious and crucial time. The young man assumed that he might have made the wrong choice. Seeing how his partner charged in without thinking about potential traps, An-Soo Young decided to talk about just like our hero wanted, as she asked him about the staircase he desired to take. After thinking for a small time, our hero declared that it didn't matter, seeing how they didn't know what lay ahead, which his partner agreed with, as well as the enforcer, who suddenly popped up behind them, moving them horrified as he explained how despite everyone being different, they had the same difficulty, meaning that their choice didn't matter. The angry lady called out the enforcer for his race, always carrying the humans. So, he explained how it was his way to help them relax. While our hero, who realized that this one was just as annoying as the clown demon, asked him if the Star War was similar to the one in the village. And when asked to elaborate, the protagonist asked him if there was going to be a separate dimension for every team. Chamu Hyuk explained how the administrator appeared to each contestant at the same time game. It was the explanation he didn't understand. The enforcer had a hard time following, so the young man clarified by pointing out how they didn't need to worry about other teams, seeing how the demon wanted to keep their floor secret. Upon hearing this, the entity took a liking to the clever one before giving him and his teammate a watch and asking for this watch to be treasured, as it would help them keep track of the days, as well as pressing it once to see their KDA and twice in order to know about their whereabouts. Meaning that it would give them their exact location after entering a new level, while pressing it 3 times would allow them to see the ranking. And with that, the demon also mentioned how they could be rewarded for their efforts, and that anything that isn't picked up will be reset. The lady realized that it meant that they would fade away, and that if a fight occurs at reset time, it will not be cancelled and the remains would not disappear. And as the protagonist realized that it would be challenging to find somewhere to hide with their items, the explanation came to an end. And so Young asked him if he didn't leave any detail behind, making the enforcer affirm that they wouldn't find happiness if they can't have faith in others. What she found ironic, as it was coming from a demon, as her partner explained how he goes for the third option on QMC. The girl agreed to let him choose, seeing how she doesn't resolve to this method, claiming to be a brilliant student. The enforcer realized that the entertaining protagonist was the one Jack told him about. Suddenly, he realized that he had forgotten a detail, before quickly remembering it regarding the stairs changing location every day and that everyone would go back to the first floor on day 9, which she decided to reveal to no one. At the same time, our heroes climbed the staircase and entered the first floor that was decorated with an odd taste proper to demons. They then decided to take a look at their coordinates. Yet, the young man had no clue how to use the data, despite knowing that they were on floor 3. His partner explained to him how X designated left and right, while Y was for back and forth, theorizing that the unit they were using was meters. This mission, which seemed like a headache, made our hero want a cigarette, but the lady urged him not to do it, as it would give away their location. With that being said, the two of them decided to take a look at the coordinates of the stair, which was the most precious intel. After some discreet scouting, they realized that the monster known as ramen soldiers appeared quickly. And So Young explained how she had met them in the castle ruins, but didn't expect them here, which amazed our hero, seeing how the ruins were difficult hunting grounds. But the lady explained that she only looked at the ruins without entering them, which is why she had survived this long, which seemed logical to our hero. The young man began to analyze the monsters, as rumor has it that they were powerful opponents to newbies who didn't concentrate on becoming stronger, meaning that he could take them on, but not the ruins on his own. He pointed out to his partner how they should be able to deal with the soldiers easily. Chow Yuk explained how he charged first while the girl waited for a chance to attack, and so he resorted to his first unique skill, in order to use the points of magic power to enhance the other stats, and by resorting to his skills to increase his life as his unique skill, he would be able to temporarily grant himself a rank 6 agility. Just then, he called the giant lizard, who was confused. Timu then charged at Alibaba Killer Croc that tried to defend itself using his sword, but the protagonist affirmed that this would be pointless as he quickly cut the lizard with his claws. Yet, upon seeing how little damage he inflicted, the hero assumed that he didn't pack enough punch. But with the monster now injured, our hero charged at him once again, leaving his partner amazed by how fast he was. With that, ANS So Young began to wonder if her ally was truly ranked 7. Just like that, the ramen soldier fell to the goblin claws. The relieved protagonist was surprised by how easy the task was. While his partner pointed out how she wasn't needed, our hero asked her to stop with these silly jokes. Yet, she affirmed to have never encountered someone this fast before. So, he explained how it was the fruit of a skill that had a short duration. But as he seemed to have more to say and was struggling to let it out, the angered lady urged him to speak his mind. So he reminded her of her particular diet, leaving her confused at first, only to quickly remember that she was paired up with the monster eater, and lashed out at him for wanting to take a snack in this moment. But he affirmed that he needed the energy in order to keep going, and so he begged her to let him do his thing, seeing how they needed to open the monsters in order to collect the tower tokens. The redhead had no choice but to leave the man to exert his madness, who expressed his gratitude. Our hero rushed to the dead lizard, leaving her disgusted. Shamwyuk recalled how this type had a core, and so he began dissecting it before joyfully searching through its organs. Shortly after, our hero found his desired piece of the monster that he immediately consumed to the girl's horror. This allowed him to enhance his endurance by a small amount that was still higher than Koilo's and would have been double if it was health. And while he was enthusiastic about the fast growth that it would offer, his partner urged him to search for the tokens. But seeing how excited he was, she was now more certain than ever that he was a psychopath. Shortly after, our hero was now in possession of a tower token that was similar to a coin. The lady immediately went on her way while he tried to ask her about the share of the gains. So, she angrily explained that they should just do the normal thing and split in half. With that, she urged him to get going as they needed to hunt as much as possible in order to guarantee survival. Despite his partner being annoyed, the young man who had no choice but to consume the marbles needed to keep his secret as long as possible. But he still hasn't scratched the possibility of telling her if it would be a necessity to win the event. Meanwhile, as a fight occurred on the second floor, the humans finally eliminated the beast and were left pretty happy about their achievement that they found easy, as it meant that they could all acquire the needed number of kills. Meanwhile, their chief left in secret as he planned on disposing of them on the last day in order to steal their kill and appear on the scoreboard in order to enter the final floor. Bayu knew very well that ranking was more important than survival, as according to the demon, efforts will be rewarded. He then took a look at the ranking and realized that he must imitate them by stealing the KDA of others. And just as he was lost in thought, he was approached by one of his teammates, snapping him back to reality and explaining to him how they might not encounter any teams on this easy floor filled with weak monsters. Yet, as the bully gave credit to the team, he began to mark his teammate in secret for being happy to not have the chance to steal kills. The young one attributed all of their success to their chief before calling out certain someones on their decision, leaving the bully intrigued. The young man was referring to the protagonist and his teammates, who foolishly charged ahead, refusing to team up with the chief. Beul explained how the hero was someone he helped in the past, and someone who also denied help this time in order to be with a girl, as he was reminded of his presence. The bully was jealous of the one who ran off with the girl, yet knew very well it was a lethal foolishness, as he was determined to kill him and his new girlfriend. Meanwhile, the desert swordsman charged up ahead and delivered a powerful strike that the young man blocked with his claws. Our hero had a hard time holding up due to the power of the monster, but just then he was asked to retreat. And so he freed himself from the confrontation. Just as the Ramman lizard was about to charge at him, he suddenly realized that he was the one being charged at by none other than the redhead who used a skill known as Strike of the magic warrior Riffidan. The monster tried to use his blade as a shield, but the crazed-looking one affirmed that it would be pointless. And so the sword of the monster began to crack before ultimately breaking. Just like that, a swordsman had been stabbed by another. This left our hero blown away by the strength of his partner. And so Young pointed out how their styles, which weren't similar, worked well together. Xiaomu Yu called her out for stating that she wasn't needed despite all of her power after realizing that he needed to rework his plans to adjust to the girl's might. As the token was picked up, the girl reminded the boy that it was her turn to get it, which he urged her to do before consuming the core in order to enhance his strength, while thinking of how chores were coming in these monsters that would continue to make him stronger if he kept hunting and consuming. The only problem was the plan. They had to take them down. As a lady who revealed herself to be a marauder possessed an unblockable skill that he should be very wary of on top of being the only one killing monsters, our hero truly wanted to have faith in her. But upon remembering the advice of his master, he left his partner intrigued as he suggested a change of plan. As the deity realized that he deemed her unworthy of trust, our hero stated that he wanted to do things the better way. So after giving a small thought, ANS So Young accepted to hear him out. Surprised by her open mind, the young man stated that they should take a different approach than the one they required him to distract while she gets to kill. So instead, he proposed making the back of the monster face the lady in order to make it easier for her to stab. And when asked about her opinion on this plan, the warrior claimed that it would surely reassure the mastermind, as he wouldn't have to worry about her suddenly betraying him and would allow them to split the kills in half. And so, she angrily decided to proceed once he tried to defend himself, only for our hero to be met with a dark gaze that left him shocked. And Swayong explained how they teamed up for mutual interest, meaning that such ensuring plans weren't something to be justified as they needed to stick together until the end. The hero who offended the lady by accident left her with a sad expression. Shortly after, our hero was facing a soldier, and after the struggle, the young man began to overpower the creature. Upon seeing how it couldn't resist anymore, he quickly knocked it back before using the nails of the goblin chief in order to puncture it down. Just as the creature was severely bleeding, he pierced its armor with his powerful claws before resorting to all of his strength in order to lift it up before slamming it down. With the blood cleaned off from the claws, the fight was finally over. The girl called out the geek for perfectly imitating Wolverine, which he denied. Shamwyuk then urged her to stop slacking, but she explained how they had already killed 3 monsters and that he was the over-exited one. After another of our hero's arguments, the lady began to think of how much stronger her ally had gotten in such a short time after the brilliant forest, to the point where the monsters here seemed like child's play to him. Meanwhile, the young man was left annoyed at accidentally finding the court he was searching for, while she began to think of how they both earned many points in the forest. Yet, while she was about to make a theory about his teacher, who might be the one behind his sudden growth, the hero claimed that it was her turn to get the coin. He asked her what was on her mind, so that she got so distracted. Yet, she affirmed to not have reacted, seeing how she always approached the one she trusts. Only then did both of them blush upon realizing what she said. The young man urged her to say it back while his partner claimed that she wanted to have a meal. He tried to ask her once again, only to be interrupted by the one who wanted to close the subject, claiming that nutrition was essential for hunting. Thus, he agreed to have a meal. On So Young asked him about his water reserve, claiming to not have brought much, to which he responded by revealing to only have 1 bottle. This made the girl mock him for assuming that there would be water in this dungeon. Yet, he affirmed that there is a nearby fountain. But as the lady explained how this water was too mysterious and shady to drink, the young man pointed out how she must not possess a certain item. While the water was definitely confusing, The hunter reached into his pocket in order to showcase his purification powder, a cheap item that should be bought in masses that makes almost any water good to drink. And So Young claimed to have only entered the dungeon with the essentials and combat items before giving the lady the powder that should last until the end of the event. The shocked girl tried to argue that she should pay him for the powder. Yet, the boy affirmed to have many more of this cheap item. She tried to argue that purification powder was rather precious in this dungeon, meaning that she now owed him. So he revealed that it was the reason behind this kindness. Chia Miyuk explained how much he had reflected on the concept of faith upon entering this dungeon, claiming to have found it weird to see the girl adapt so easily to the two attackers that she didn't hesitate to terminate, wondering if she would have done the same on Earth. According to the hero, this continent was a different world that affected their philosophy and that some things remained the same yet to change. The girl failed to grasp the relation between these words and their current situation. So he explained how she was the reason behind everything he had done. She was left surprised as he pointed out how she had always been quick to make decisions, as if she already knew what must be done. He also claimed that she was stronger than him, which is why her will frightened him, as it meant change, but in reality, she was still the same one protecting her morals. Chia Muhuk affirmed that she didn't owe him anything, seeing how she was his beacon of hope, and that he wished to protect their values in this land until the end. And so, he expressed his gratefulness once again towards the lady before claiming that he still didn't trust her and that he was only giving her the powder she had earned. Chamiyuk finally understood where the young man was coming from before looking at his gift and affirming that she shall not misuse it. Shortly after, Ano Young felt grateful to have condensed energy capsules despite them lacking the warm feeling of real food, which is why the protagonist made a suggestion, claiming that the snake jerky he offered her was truly delicious, only for her to decline and ask what he was doing. The young man revealed he was looking at the rankings, which the lady found pointless, as they couldn't even reach it. Upon taking a look at the list, some of its names left the hero uneasy. Xiaomuyuk, who noticed that his teacher was in 4th place, began to wonder about the secret behind reaching the top ranks. He then began to recall how his master described the hunt as an awful place. The man claimed to have achieved great success and to not have revealed it in order to not seem prideful, and that his well usage of the class marauder led him to the peaks he once reached. The man then asked his disciple to do whatever he can without hesitation in order to survive the hellhole, and explained that failing to do so would render him a one-limb man, just like him before affirming to him that he should do what needs to be done. Just then he was brought back to reality by his partner, who claimed that they should try to locate the exit. Shimuyu began to think of how he didn't want to embrace evil despite kindness not being welcomed in this place. Our protagonist wanted to gain power in order to live as he pleases before thinking of how he would continue to do his thing without sparing any effort, thinking that this was the meaning behind the words of his teacher. Thus, he was once again determined to gain power. After some time, the exit had finally been located. I want you to point out how they had spent half a day in this level, while his partner stated the distance they had traveled. She then explained that they had walked 4.5 kilometers and that they needed to walk 2.5 more in order to exit the dungeon. And as the protagonist pointed out how they had been lost in this labyrinth for 13 hours, he pointed out that this magic tower is much bigger than it seemed. Shamuyuk, who realized that they couldn't approach the exit due to the risk of meeting other teams, was asked to not forget the coordinates of the exit. Our heroes then recalled the enforcer claiming that their location would be revealed every 24 hours, meaning that they only had 11 left. So, the lady proposed to take the stairs. The young man pointed out how the 24 hours would be reset after climbing floors, while his partner stated that it would be best for farming to stay a long time on a single floor. And as the core consumer pointed out how the monsters here were rewarding, his partner brought up sleep, claiming that 6 hours should be enough, which the hero agreed with before pointing out how they would still have 5 free hours. With that being said, the two of them decided to use their remaining free time in order to farm as much as possible. And so our heroes decided to charge in once again. While the protagonist realized that they had just enough time to kill 50 lizards, meaning that he could at least get 40 cores that would greatly boost his progress. The thought of the rewards made him crack a weird smile that creeped out his partner. Shortly after, the 5 hours had come to an end. As the young man claimed to be exhausted, his partner stated that it was amazing of them to hunt for 18 hours straight. Chia Muyuk found the results very pleasant, as they had earned 86 tokens on top of his stats, having greatly been boosted due to his marble diet. He was even left overjoyed upon looking at his window panel, as keeping on this growth rate until the next day would allow his skill rush to make all of his stats except magic rank 6. He thought he would be invincible for 5 minutes. With that being said, the protagonist was once again glad by the choice he made upon picking his